"I'm not signing as the father," I said, my voice too loud for the beige quiet of Baylor Frisco's ultrasound room, the way it bounced off the laminate cabinetry and made the sonographer flinch. The gel on my wife's belly looked like a clear lake at night, cold and reflective, and the black and white constellation on the monitor flickered with a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. The tech, a woman with a name badge that read Krista, had slid a consent form across a rolling tray like a diner check. Sign here, date here, initial that you understand first trimester testing may involve the intended parents. "I'm not the intended parent," I repeated, and for a second all I could see in the glass cabinet door was my own face in warping reflection. Dallas Cowboys cap crushed in my fist, eyes rimmed red from a week of bad sleep and worse coffee, a man who used to think his life made sense. That was at 10:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. If you rewind our little movie back 3 years, you'll see me at a backyard cookout, charcoal smoke hanging low, Bud Light sweating on the rail, the Cowboys game bleeding in and out of every conversation like a chorus. I'm Aaron, 34, born in a Methodist hospital in Dallas and raised on Whataburger taquitos, Friday night lights, and road trips that ended in Buc-ee's because my dad hoarded jerky like it was war rationing. I manage operations for a mid-sized logistics outfit off I-35. I used to think I was a simple man with a simple story. Meet girl, marry girl, build a life with a mortgage and a Labrador and a Pinterest deck. The girl was Hannah, black hair, quick laugh, nurse practitioner at a clinic in Plano, with a habit of tugging her sleeves down over her hands when she was nervous. We met the way a lot of Dallas stories start. After church, in the parking lot, where you could fry an egg on the hood 9 months of the year. She was loading a donation bin into her Subaru, and I offered my back. She said she didn't need help. I lifted anyway and pretended it wasn't heavy. We got Tex-Mex at Gloria's, argued about salsa heat, and by date 3, I'd learned that she cried at Pixar trailers and had a scar on her left knee from the kind of childhood bicycle summers that don't exist anymore. When I asked her to marry me, it was in the booth at Keller's Drive-In over cheeseburgers and a root beer float, because her parents got engaged at a diner, and she said all good things taste a little like grill smoke and paper napkins. She said yes. Our first year tasted like good coffee and Target runs, new sheets and late-night ESPN, her scrubs to the dryer door with a magnet clip, and my steel-toe boots by the mat. We were ordinary in the sweetest way. Sundays at the farmer's market, weeknights timing HEB rotisserie chicken with the microwave rice, summers with the AC on high and the dog pressed to the vent like he'd discovered religion. We tried for a baby like you, try to grill steak perfectly, rules, timing, hope. And when it didn't happen, we did what people do. We peed on sticks and marked calendars and laughed so we wouldn't cry. Hannah's older sister Lily cried first. Her story was heavier than ours, IVF rounds, a miscarriage at 9 weeks, the way hope can be a bully. Her husband Jason is the kind of guy you'd pick to lift your sofa and grill your brisket. He sells insurance and says there's only 2 kinds of problems, covered and not. We were at their townhome in Addison one night, the Cowboys losing like it was a tradition, when Lily excused herself to the bathroom and didn't come back. Hannah followed, and I heard the kind of sounds people make when they're trying not to make any sound. Later, over pie that nobody wanted, Lily said the doctor used the word unviable, and the silence that landed on the table made the forks look like weapons. We were family. That's how we understood ourselves then. I remember a road trip to Fredericksburg for a long weekend, windows down, Hannah's hair whipping the way you see in shampoo commercials, except in real life it gets in your mouth, and we sang along to Tom Petty like we'd earned it. At the bed and breakfast we talked futures. 2 kids if the world was kind. Maybe a minivan, maybe a Tacoma, suburb or not. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "Whatever happens, we choose it together." It's funny how a sentence can sound like a vow, and later like a riddle. Foreshadow is a word you hear in high school English, and in real life it shows up as little things that don't look like anything when you're living them. The first little thing was Hannah changing her passcode. We'd always been casual about our phones. I handled Spotify in the truck. She used my Face ID to Venmo the dog sitter, normal married logistics. One night at Cane Rosso, she announced, half joking, that I'm not allowed to fix her settings because I always make her notifications weird. And then she cupped the screen with her hand when Lily texted. I didn't care, or I told myself I didn't. The second thing was a stack of tri-fold brochures that arrived like pizza menus. fertility clinics and tasteful blues and grays, stock photos of smiling couples who looked like they'd never yelled about dishwasher loading. I assumed they were for Lily. A lot of our life had been lately. Hannah and I picked her up after procedures, brought soup, sat through doctors' explanations about retrievals and transfers, like we were auditing a class we'd never major in. The third thing couldn't decide whether it was a small thing or a big one. A Google Calendar invite that pinged my laptop during a meeting. Wellness apt, Baylor, 9 a.m., on a day that I knew Hannah was off. It's the kind of thing you don't ask about because it sounds like you're policing someone, so I didn't. That Friday night, she said she was going to a girls' night, which in our life had come to mean Lily and a Netflix show about houses none of us could afford. I put on ESPN and let the dog curl beside me and fell asleep during a Pac-12 replay. Saturday morning, the dog woke me at 7 because his stomach alarm is better than mine. There was a post-it on the coffee maker in Hannah's curly handwriting. Farmer's Market, back by 11, get peaches. Her Subaru was gone. I did what men do when they're alone in the quiet. I cleaned the garage and made it worse. At 10:45, my phone buzzed. Running late, love you. I texted back a thumbs up and a peach emoji because I'm 40% dad jokes even without kids. At noon, another text. Lily not feeling great, I'm staying. I pictured heating pads and ginger ale and decided I was a good husband for not needing more detail. At 2 p.m., while I was washing the cooler from last weekend's lake day, my Apple Watch chimed with a notification I didn't recognize. A shared album update. Baby Journey. I tapped. There was one photo. A macro shot of a medication vial next to a syringe on a kitchen counter I recognized as Lily's by the crack in the grout. The caption said, Night 3, go team. I told myself they were documenting for hope. Sunday morning, Hannah returned with a tote full of produce she doesn't actually like, okra, beets, and a new softness behind her eyes, like she'd cried and then put on a fresh face. She smelled like the lavender lotion that lives at Lily's sink. We ate beets like they were penance, and she told me she might pick up extra shifts this month because Maggie at the clinic needed coverage. No problem, I said, because we were a team and teams pick up slack. That week, she moved a small cosmetic bag from the bathroom drawer to her purse and tucked it deep. It clinked when it moved, and she said it was just sunscreen. She started wearing baggy sweatshirts even when the heat index mocked us. On Thursday, when we were sorting mail, a thick envelope slid out. A legal-sized set of papers from a firm downtown with a blind embossed logo. Oh, that's for Lily, she said, too quickly, and set it aside like it was junk. Later, when she was in the shower, I saw it again on the entry table. My name was on the second page, not a header, embedded in a paragraph. Spousal acknowledgement of gestational carrier agreement. I didn't open it then. I was raised to mind my business and respect sealed things, and I let politeness wear a badge that day. Sunday, we drove to her parents in Garland for meatloaf and an awkward prayer where everyone pretended we were all equally fine. Her mom pressed her about vitamins, and Hannah swallowed one at the table like it proved something. On the drive home, she reached across the console, laced our fingers, and asked if I still wanted 2 kids. Sure, I said, and tried to make a joke about minivans versus Tacomas. What if it happened differently than we planned? She asked, looking not at me but at the road, the way you look at a horizon when you're trying not to cry. Like adoption, I said, like being flexible. I kissed her knuckles and said, we choose together. And for a second she let out the kind of breath that's really an apology pretending to be air. The next morning she left early with the cosmetic bag. I watched her cross the driveway with her shoulders squared like an athlete walking to the blocks. At 9:17 a.m., my MacBook pinged again. iMessage sync is helpful until it's not. A text from Lily to Hannah popped into the messages window before I could close it. Carrier screening came back clean. NP says we're green lit. Transfer window opens next week. We'll tell him after. The "we'll tell him after" was a crowbar to the ribcage. I clicked the conversation and saw the thread like a timeline I wasn't invited to. Photos of blood work bands, a Polaroid of a home injection in the belly with a smiley face drawn around a bruise, a screenshot of an appointment labeled mock transfer, Plano IVF. There was a PDF, gestational carrier agreement V4, final edits. My name and signature block appeared on page 17. I was supposed to acknowledge, notarize, and be the supportive husband of a woman agreeing to carry her sister's baby. Hannah's eggs, Lily's, a donor, The legality didn't matter in that instant as much as the fact that nobody had asked me if I was willing to hand over my wife's body for 9 months to a project with a hope-heavy budget and a secrecy clause. I scrolled with my heart knocking like a trunk on a pothole street. Clause 8. 2. Spousal acknowledgement. Carrier's spouse affirms awareness and consent. Clause 8.3. Carrier's spouse shall not interfere. The not interfere part felt like the smallest sentence in the biggest room. I closed the laptop as if it had bitten me. At lunch, I drove to Jason's office under the pretense of dropping off a Yeti cup he'd left at our place. He wasn't there, out on appointments, and the receptionist's smile held the bland assurance of someone who has never been lied to in a way that rearranges the furniture in your brain. I sat in my truck with the AC blasting so hard it felt like a sandstorm of cold. I texted Hannah. "Dinner plans?" She answered, "Working late, Maggie's shift." My stomach did that slow elevator drop, the one from bad news and roller coasters. On the way home, I stopped at Target for nothing and everything and stood too long in the baby aisle, staring at onesies like they contained secret math. That night, while she showered, I cracked the downtown envelope like it was an egg that might contain either yolk or hand grenade. The agreement smelled faintly of toner and panic. Attached to it was a Schedule A, medical logistics, with dates already filled in. Med start, lining check, tentative transfer. Under intended parents, it listed Lily and Jason, their address, their emergency contact. Under carrier, it listed my womb. Under spouse partner, it listed me, blank line for signature, date, and notarization. In the margin, in Hannah's tidy pocket-sized handwriting, someone had written, "Tell A," after confirm viability, and underlined it twice. On the kitchen island, her iPad lit up with a calendar alert that chimed like a bell in a quiet church. Embryo transfer, tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. Driver, Jason. I looked up at the clock and felt the room tilt, felt the past 3 years slide like a drawer that had never quite been level, and in the hollow silence that followed the chime, I realized the heartbeat I had heard that morning on a screen would, if everything went to plan, grow inside my wife, and none of it, not the decision, not the timeline, not the truth, had ever included me. The night I saw the embryo transfer alert on her iPad, I didn't confront her. I wish I could say I stormed into the bathroom, ripped open the shower curtain like a man in a movie, and demanded answers, but in real life, betrayal doesn't make you bold. It makes you quiet. I set the iPad back down, face down on the counter, and pretended I hadn't seen a thing. Hannah came out in her oversized cowboy's hoodie, hair damp, smelling like lavender shampoo, and kissed me on the cheek as if nothing about our world had shifted. My lips moved automatically. "Long day?" She said, "The clinic's been slammed." She didn't notice that my hands shook while I held the remote. The next morning she left before sunrise, claiming she had to cover a double shift for a coworker. Her Subaru's taillights disappeared down our street, and the silence in our house was so loud it rang in my ears. I stared at the kitchen island where the envelope had been and decided I needed proof. Not just whispers of texts, not just calendar alerts, but solid, undeniable evidence. Something no amount of gaslighting could explain away. I started with the trash. It sounds pathetic, but in Dallas suburbs, people put their secrets in hefty bags. At the bottom of our kitchen bin, beneath coffee grounds and paper towels, I found 2 orange pharmacy bottles, labels peeled off, but not well enough. The faint print said progesterone in oil and estradiol. I'm no doctor, but Google is, and within 30 seconds I knew these were exactly what a woman takes before a fertility transfer. Not birth control, not vitamins. Transfer prep. I lined the bottles on the counter like evidence in a crime drama, snapped photos with my iPhone, and dropped them in a Ziploc bag. My hands were shaking so badly the photos blurred, so I steadied myself with a Bud Light from the fridge even though it was barely 9 a.m. That became my first file in what I started calling the folder. A digital folder on my laptop, password locked, where I would store everything I found. Over the next week, I became an investigator in my own marriage. At work, I handled shipping schedules with one hand and scrolled through synced iMessages with the other. I saw texts from Lily like, "Transfer complete, fingers crossed, thank you sis, can't wait to tell Jason tonight," and Hannah replying, "Anything for you." There was no mention of me. I was the ghost in the conversation, the husband erased. Then came the receipts. I logged into our joint credit card online one night after she'd fallen asleep, her soft breathing steady beside me. Among the usual Target runs and gas station stops, I saw a $482 charge at Baylor Frisco's fertility clinic. A week later, $197 at a pharmacy in Plano that specializes in specialty compounding. And strangest of all, a $65 Uber ride time-stamped the exact morning she said she was covering a shift. She doesn't use Uber, she drives everywhere. The drop-off location was the fertility clinic. I screenshotted it all. Each screenshot went into the folder. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop further, but curiosity and betrayal is like hunger. You can't stop once you start. I set up our old iPad in the living room, logged into her iCloud, and let the data sync. Within an hour, photos started appearing. One was of Hannah in a clinic gown, hair tied back, IV in her hand. The kind of photo you send to a sister for reassurance. Another was of a stack of legal documents with highlighter marks around compensation schedule and carrier responsibilities.
Mom,
I stared at that word. Carrier, not wife, not partner. Carrier. By this point, I was living two lives. With Hannah, I pretended everything was normal. We watched Sunday night football, grilled steaks, took the dog to White Rock Lake. But alone, I was building a case. I printed the documents I'd found, slid them into a manila envelope, and kept them under the spare tire in my truck bed. Every night, I checked that envelope like it was contraband. Then came the hospital bill. That was the moment suspicion turned into certainty. It arrived in the mail on a Wednesday afternoon, thick paper with that hospital logo in the corner. Hannah grabbed it before I could, slid it into her purse. But she left her purse on the counter when she went upstairs to shower. I pulled the envelope out, heart racing like I was a teenager caught sneaking a beer. The bill was addressed to Hannah, but the description read, outpatient procedure, embryo transfer, patient, gestational, carrier. There it was, in cold clinical typeface. My wife had carried out the transfer. Not a plan, not a maybe, but an actual event. I shoved it back in her purse before she came downstairs, my pulse loud in my ears. She smiled at me, damp hair falling in waves, and asked if I wanted pasta for dinner. I mumbled something about not being hungry. That night, while she slept, I sat in the dark living room, the glow of my laptop the only light, scrolling through the folder. Photos of meds, screenshots of texts, credit card charges, and now the hospital bill. Each piece clicked together like puzzle edges, forming a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't deny. Hannah had secretly agreed to carry her sister's baby, and I was nothing more than an obstacle to be told after. I thought about confronting her right then, waking her up, shoving the folder in her face. But some instinct stopped me. Not yet. Not until I had every angle covered, every lie pinned down. Because when I did confront her, I wanted there to be no escape. The final nail came the following weekend. Hannah told me she was meeting Lily for brunch at Breadwinners. I decided to follow her. It felt wrong. Married men shouldn't tail their wives like private eyes. But betrayal rewrites the rules. I parked a block away and watched from inside my truck. Sure enough, she never walked into Breadwinners. Instead, Jason's black F-150 pulled up. She climbed in the passenger seat. They drove off together, not toward Lily's house, but back toward the fertility clinic. I tailed them, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. They parked, walked in together, and 30 minutes later came out with a folder of papers. Hannah laughed at something Jason said, the way she used to laugh at me. He touched her shoulder, guiding her back into the truck. I sat there with the AC blasting, my mind numb. It wasn't just a theory anymore. It was real, undeniable. My wife had bound herself to a secret deal, turning her body into a vessel for her sister's baby. And she had done it behind my back, alongside her brother-in-law. I took out my phone, snapped photos of them walking out together, and added them to the folder. By the time I drove home, I knew there was no turning back. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I had evidence. Evidence that my wife had betrayed the promise we made, that we'd choose everything together. And with every screenshot, every bill, every photo, I was getting closer to the moment when I would put it all in front of her. The folder wasn't just a file anymore. It was a weapon. And soon, I was going to use it. The folder burned a hole in my mind every hour of every day until finally, it couldn't stay hidden anymore. By then, I'd memorized every document, every line of legal jargon, every receipt. But evidence is just paper until you slam it on the table in front of the person who swore they'd never lie to you. I wanted that moment, The kind of scene you see in movies where everything slows down and the liar's mask cracks wide open. I chose a Saturday, Lily's birthday of all things. Her parents had rented out a private room at Maggiano's in North Park Mall, one of those dimly lit Italian places where the booths are half hidden and the servers wear crisp white shirts with wine-stained cuffs. Everyone was going to be there, her family, her friends, Jason's co-workers. It was supposed to be a celebration. I decided it would be a revelation. That morning, I slipped the manila envelope into the inside pocket of my denim jacket. I rehearsed what I'd say as I brushed my teeth, as I drove, as I parked my truck. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed nails. Betrayal has a way of making you feel crazy until you put the receipts on the table and watch the color drain from the guilty party's face. We arrived together. Hannah wore a navy dress that used to be my favorite. Flowing fabric, a neckline just modest enough to pass church standards, just daring enough to turn heads. She looked radiant, glowing in a way strangers might mistake for pregnancy joy, but I knew better. The glow wasn't for me. The dinner started like every other family gathering. Her dad ordered wine. Her mom clutched Lily's hand like it was porcelain. Jason laughed too loudly at a coworker's joke. Hannah leaned against me like we were the picture of married happiness. And for the first half hour, I played along, smiling when people expected, cutting my chicken parm, sipping red wine that tasted like pennies. Then came the moment. Lily stood, glass in hand, cheeks flushed with emotion. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about her journey, and how family is everything. Jason nodded proudly beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back like he was claiming property. Hannah beamed from her seat, eyes shining, and whispered under her breath, "I'm so glad I could do this for her." That was my cue. I pushed back my chair, the screech of wood on tile silencing the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every eye turned. My heart hammered like it was trying to punch through my ribs. I pulled the envelope from my jacket and slapped it down on the table so hard the plates rattled. "Glad you could do what for her, Hannah," I said, voice low but sharp enough to cut the air. Hannah froze, her smile collapsing. "Aaron, please." I cut her off. "Should I tell them, or do you want to explain why your husband had to find out from a hospital bill that you secretly agreed to be a gestational carrier for your sister?" Gasps rippled down the table. Lily's wine glass wobbled in her hand, spilling red across the white tablecloth. Jason stiffened, his jaw tightening, but he didn't say a word. I opened the envelope and fanned out the documents like a dealer at a Vegas table. Screenshots, receipts, the hospital bill. Here's the proof. The meds you bought with our joint credit card. The embryo transfer bill with the words gestational carrier in black and white. The Uber ride you took to the clinic when you said you were covering Maggie's shift. And the text thread. You remember, Hannah? The one where you and Lily planned to tell me after. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father's fork clattered to his plate. Hannah's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "No," I said, louder now. "You were never going to tell me. You wrote it down, Hannah. Don't tell Aaron until viability. That's not partnership. That's betrayal." Jason finally spoke, voice defensive and tight. "Aaron, calm down. This was a family decision." I turned on him so fast his words shriveled in the air. "Family decision? You think you get to use my wife's body without so much as a conversation with me? You think you get to play the hero husband while I sit in the dark?" The room was dead quiet, except for the clink of someone's spoon falling to the floor. Hannah tried again, tears now streaking her face. "It wasn't like that. Lily's been through so much, Aaron. I couldn't stand by and do nothing." "You could have stood by your marriage," I shot back. "You could have chosen honesty. Instead, you chose lies." I looked around the table at the stunned faces, the witnesses who would carry this story out of Maggiano's and into the gossip circuits of every church and neighborhood in Garland. Everyone hear me now. This wasn't about generosity. This was about secrecy, about a woman who thought her husband was so irrelevant she didn't even need his consent for the biggest decision of her life. A server, poor guy, walked in with a tray of tiramisu and froze like he'd stumbled into a crime scene. I pressed the envelope to Hannah's chest. "Here's your paperwork. Maybe Jason should sign the spousal acknowledgement next time, since you already treat him like he's the partner who matters." Her face crumpled. Lily burst into sobs. Jason's fists clenched at his sides. And then, silence. The kind of silence where the whole world seems to wait for the next move. I stepped back, voice steadier than I felt. This marriage, this partnership, ends tonight. I turned, walked out of the restaurant into the night air, my heart pounding like a drum. Behind me, I could hear voices rising, chairs scraping, chaos breaking open, but I didn't look back. On the way to my truck, my phone buzzed. A new message, synced from Hannah's iPad. A group chat with Lily. The latest line glowed on my screen like a curse. He knows. What do we do now? Cliffhanger delivered. When I left Maggiano's that night, I didn't slam the door or shout one last insult. I just walked to my truck, turned the ignition, and let the Dallas night swallow me whole. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Hannah calling, then Lily, then Jason. I didn't answer. The only sound I wanted was the engine's steady rumble and the faint static of a late-night sports broadcast on the radio. Sometimes silence is the sharpest blade you can use. The next morning, I woke up in the guest room at my buddy Mark's place, the kind of guy who always has cold Bud Light in the fridge and an extra toothbrush in the cabinet. He didn't ask many questions, just handed me a mug of burnt coffee and let me sit on his back porch in my wrinkled clothes. For the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. The lie had detonated. The truth was loose in the world. There was no stuffing it back into silence. Of course, the fallout came fast. Hannah showed up at Mark's that afternoon, pounding on the door until I stepped outside. Her mascara was smudged, her eyes red. "Aaron, please," she begged. "You have to understand, I was trying to help my sister. I didn't mean to hurt you." I looked at her, really looked, and realized I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. The girl I'd proposed to at Keller's Drive-In never would have signed away her body without even a conversation. "You didn't mean to hurt me," I said quietly. "You planned every step around hiding it from me. That's not an accident, Hannah. That's a choice." She cried harder, reaching for my arm, but I stepped back. "We'll talk through lawyers," I told her. "That's the only way forward." And so we did. The divorce process was quick, brutal, and strangely anticlimactic. Texas doesn't have much patience for drawn-out drama when there are clear documents proving betrayal. My attorney was a sharp woman in her 40s who'd seen every flavor of infidelity and deception. When she slid the gestational carrier agreement across her desk toward me, her eyebrow arched. "Heard of cheating," she said dryly, "but this is a new one." The papers spoke for themselves. Secrecy clauses, medical bills, even the spousal acknowledgement line with my name left blank. It was enough to tip the scales. Within 3 months, the house was listed for sale, our joint account split, and Hannah moved back in with her parents while Lily's pregnancy advanced under the watch of her community of enablers. The humiliation stung most for them, not me. Word spread fast in Garland and Plano. Church ladies whispered in parking lots. Jason's coworkers avoided eye contact at the water cooler. At one point, Hannah's mother cornered me at Kroger, begging me not to ruin Lily's joy with my bitterness. I told her flatly, "I didn't ruin anything. They did. I'm just the guy who refused to play along." When the divorce was finalized, I took the dog and moved into a one-bedroom rental in Richardson. Nothing fancy, but it had a porch where I could watch the world go by. I bought secondhand furniture, a flat screen from Best Buy, and a grill small enough to fit on the patio. Freedom, I discovered, doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone with a cold beer, watching ESPN highlights, and realizing nobody is lying to your face. Healing wasn't instant. Nights were hardest, rolling over to an empty bed, hearing phantom laughter in the kitchen. But slowly, rituals rebuilt me. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market without post-it notes telling me what to buy. Pancake breakfasts on Sundays with extra syrup, just for me. The dog's crayon-colored paw print art pinned to the fridge by my niece after she visited, reminding me that family isn't always the one you marry into. There was anger too, don't get me wrong. I spent more than a few evenings yelling at the TV when the Cowboys blew another lead, knowing the anger wasn't really about football. But with time, the fury dulled. It's hard to stay mad at people who've already destroyed themselves. Months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lily's pregnancy had complications. Jason missed work, Hannah missed shifts, their perfect plan unraveling thread by thread. For a while, I wondered if karma was working overtime, but then I realized something. Their suffering wasn't mine to celebrate. Peace wasn't going to come from their downfall. It had to come from me choosing not to let their choices define the rest of my life. So I chose peace. One Friday night, nearly a year after the Maggiano's explosion, I sat on my porch with a Bud Light in hand and the dog at my feet. A neighbor kid was selling lemonade across the street. The sun dipped low in a Texas orange sky, and ESPN's ticker scrolled scores I didn't really care about. For the first time, I felt settled. Not victorious, not vengeful, just settled. I thought back to Hannah's words on that road trip to Fredericksburg years ago. Whatever happens, we choose it together. The irony cut deep, but it also taught me something. Some choices aren't yours to share. Some choices, when made in the dark, kill the partnership they were meant to protect. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to humiliate her further. I just needed to walk away and build a life where honesty was the foundation. I raised my beer to the sunset, whispered to nobody in particular, "Sometimes the trash takes itself out." And I laughed. Not the bitter kind, but the free kind. Because I was free.